life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Sh. Somehow I Thrive. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Welcome back to Affirm That Sh. Somehow I Thrived, the podcast where we speak our truth, own our healing, and affirm our way into wholeness, one conversation at a time. Today's guest is a woman whose strength radiates through unimaginable loss. Theresa Mark is a nurse, a devoted mother, and a fierce advocate for mental health. Theresa experienced the unthinkable, the loss of her son Josh, to suicide. Josh often shared he didn't feel like himself after his kidney transplant. So Theresa's conversation is not only about grief, but advocacy, motherhood, and healing. The power of giving her voice to the story that needs to be heard. But before we meet Theresa, let's hear her affirmations. I invite you now to join me in your space and place to settle in, take a deep breath, and to repeat after me. I gave my son my all, my heart, my hope, my courage, and that will always be my guiding light. I gave my son my all, my heart, my hope, my courage, and that will always be my guiding light. I gave my son my all, my heart, my hope, my courage, and that will always be my guiding light. I honor the strength it took to stand by my son through his diagnosis, treatment, kidney transplant, and every prayer whispered. I honor the strength it took to stand by my son through his diagnosis, treatment, kidney transplant, and every prayer whispered. I honor the strength it took to stand by my son through his diagnosis, treatment, kidney transplant, and every prayer whispered. I am always catching glimpses of my son, from his smell in the gentle breeze, his laughter in my best memories, and the glow of his heart in the dark. He is always with me. I am always catching glimpses of my son, from his smell in the gentle breeze, his laughter in my best memories, and the glow of his heart in the dark. He is always with me. I am always catching glimpses of my son, from his smell in the gentle breeze, his laughter in my best memories, and the glow of his heart in the dark. He is always with me. Stay tuned. After this, we'll meet Theresa.
Hi, my name is Connie Walton,
And I'm Jennifer Rogers.
and together we are the co-founders of the Sacred Victory Collective.
Sacred Victory Collective invites you to come spend time with us March 2026 in this beautiful home in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. It's a retreat where you will find yourself in a quiet space with your soul sisters, reliving, replenishing, and reigniting your soul.
To find out more, visit our website at sacredvictorycollective.com to snag your ticket to this beautiful retreat. It's a once in a lifetime and you don't want to miss it.
Good morning, Theresa. Thank you for being here with me today on today's episode of Affirm That Shit. Somehow I thrived. For those who are just meeting you, can you introduce us to your Josh and tell us what he was like as a person, as a son, as a spirit?
Well, ever since he was little, he was really in tune to people. I can remember he didn't actually say a sentence until he was 2 because everybody spoke for him. And I think the reason he did that was because he was always in tune, you know, to everybody. And he's like, oh, well, they have me. Why should I talk? But then once he started, well, that was the end. But if you met him personally, um, he was shy with new people. But after that, he wasn't. So, but he was a very intelligent young man. He was always in special math class, and I'm saying for gifted children, and all children are gifted. I don't want to ever count anyone out. One of my jobs in 44 years of nursing, the one I had previous to the one I have now, was with developmentally disabled people. So everyone has their own special gifts. So I don't want to ever say that no child has them. So I'm very sensitive about that. Anyhow, yeah, he was always just very, very intelligent, always wanting to learn new things. And then he started, we're a big football family. Um, and I'm not going to say who, well, I guess I can say. My husband's a big Steelers fan. He was born in Pittsburgh, and my boys were, I'm not. I'm more the Cleveland and like Portia thing, which is the Browns, and they're not very good. But we did bond over the Cleveland Indians, now Guardians, and basketball too for Cleveland. So that is my other son, who we met dear Portia through when they went to college together for broadcast journalism. And so that's how we got to meet her. And she's been a blessing ever since the day we met her. She actually performed her friend, my son's wedding this past December. She was the officiant, and she did fabulous. And I'm still having people talk about her to me, how wonderful she did. So anyhow, something did happen though, and I'm going to just veer off for a second. When we were looking at the wedding pictures, we saw a shadow next to the bride. Now there was sunlight coming in, but this was a shadow that was perfectly straight up and down, and it did not come from that one did not come from the window. And I should have asked you about this, but I have a nephew that is a psychic / medium. They saw him there, and so you know how we talked about glimpses. Yeah, there were plenty that day. He was supposed to be his brother's best man, and it was very, very difficult for me. The ceremony was, and other parts, But to get back to Josh, he was an athlete, as you can see, many years. He played he played coach pitch and midget football when he was 7 years old, and he didn't stop. He also wrestled and played baseball. I mean, he was just a super athlete until the day he got sick, and then all that stopped. And that was in 2018, like in the winter, February or so. He had been off and on sick that whole winter, like from 17 to 18. And he started to feel unwell, which he never had. He was never sick. I mean, ever. Like he didn't even have his tonsils out, I don't think. So he was never sick at all. And so for him to be even complaining a little, was very unusual. But it started out like he had an ear infection, and then he had bronchitis, and then he had a sinus infection, and then it kept just sort of going down his body until we thought he had pneumonia. He had been to probably hospitals for 2 months straight, at least one time a week. And we kept coming up with, oh, it's your standard ear infection, pneumonia, all that. Until I was traveling for work. I'm a nurse, and I was out of town. And my husband called me and said, Josh looks yellow. I'm like, he does. And so he sent me a picture of him, and he did. But typical wonderful student that my son is, he was in an engineering program at his high school here where we live in Bolivar, Ohio. And it was called Project Lead the Way. And I know it is a program all over the country. It isn't just, right here where we live. And so they take high school students and they put them in, it's like pre-engineering. Okay. And he loved that class. And he had worked on a project. And he waited until the day he finished it and they won first place for me to take him to the hospital. So that's just how he was. My husband's like, he's limping, he's sick, he was weak, he was yellow, but damn it, he had to win first place, and that's just how he was, very focused. And now that was during baseball season, and he hadn't been feeling well, so he didn't just play, and he was much better at football than baseball, so that didn't upset him that much that we knew of. Okay. But he went from even getting first place on a Thursday afternoon to being in Akron Children's Hospital close to death on Saturday. It happened that quick. He had an autoimmune disease that was called GPA, which is granulomatosis with polyangiitis, or known as another name, Wegener's disease. It is a autoimmune disease that the white and red blood cells fight against each other. And so how would we ever know about that? What happened was I took him to our local hospital here in Canton, Ohio, and the ER doctor, he was jaundiced. He said he had pneumonia, and he said his ears were bad and his nose was bad. But the thing that clued him was his color, and it kind of mimicked leukemia in his blood work, but then his kidney numbers were out the roof. And typically you won't see kidney numbers, be so bad with just leukemia. Eventually it affect the kidneys, but not right away. So luckily the doctor at Altman Hospital said, you got to get him out of here. I don't know what's wrong with him. I just know that he's really sick. So we drove by ambulance because it's not very far from Canton to Akron, about half hour. And thank God there was a young female doctor there who was a rheumatologist. Those are the doctors that deal with autoimmune diseases. Excuse me for a second. And she looked at everything after they called her in. They called a bunch of people in. They had no idea really in the beginning. That disease affects 1 in a million adults, but only 1 in 2 million, teens and children. So it's extremely rare. That's why no one could figure it out for so long. And had we been like where you live in Oklahoma, you probably wouldn't have made it, because we have excellent healthcare in Ohio. You could say a lot of things about Ohio, our weather stinks, a lot of things, but we have excellent healthcare here. We have Cleveland. We have 2 major, healthcare systems in Cleveland. We have Akron, fabulous Akron Children's Hospital. And then we have good hospitals in between there. And we have Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and also nationwide in Columbus. So we're loaded with healthcare. So thank God, because like I said, if he'd been anywhere else, he wouldn't have made it. But this doctor knew what to do. They took him into the ICU, and he was very sick for 2 or 3 days. To confirm this diagnosis, they had to do a kidney transplant, and to do that, they had to put him on a ventilator, which he was already close to being on anyhow. The disease had creeped into his lungs, so he wasn't doing very well. They had already started a treatment regimen of real high dose steroids, plasmapheresis, and another drug, but they didn't use that until they confirmed the diagnosis because it's pretty toxic. But it's called rituximab. But those three things and dialysis because his kidneys had failed. He was in complete kidney failure at that point. And so those four things, after about a week, he came out of it. And we were amazed, thrilled, we'd been praying, everyone had been praying. And, he made it, but he was very, very, very sick. And basically at that point, it was just a waiting game to see if the medicine would keep helping, what was the kidney status. So we were in Akron Children's for 2.5 months. And the medicine worked. His kidneys recovered a little bit. They were well enough for him to come home for the summer. And we got home in, he went in May, I think May 10th or 11th, and then June. It was in the end of June, July when he came home for the rest of the summer. And he was okay. Was on a lot of medicine, had to be real careful about his diet. I don't know if you have viewers out there that are on, have had transplants or on dialysis, but it's very difficult. And it's even more difficult for a 17-year-old that's used to eating a lot, and drinking a lot of fluids, especially. When you're on dialysis, you have a limited amount you can drink because your kidneys, the water goes through, but the toxins don't come out. That's what happens in kidney failure. That's why you go to dialysis. So that whole summer he was going to, he didn't go to dialysis yet. It wasn't until October that he started to get really, really sick. And he had a girlfriend going. He was also going, well, not at that point. He was still in high school, but he had a girlfriend, and she graduated that summer in May of 2018. And so he was able to get out and do stuff with her. But she had moved up to Akron because she was going to Akron University that fall, and he went to visit her. He was in high school still. He was a senior at that point, and his girlfriend was in first year in college. He was going to visit her one evening, and he went to visit her, and I think they went to a drive-in and came back, and he didn't realize how tired he was. And on the way home, we live south of Canton, and she lives in Akron. So on the way home, he was really sick. He got sick in the car. He was exhausted, and he flipped his car. This is in the middle of the night, and we had another miracle. Let's just put it that way. He didn't have to go to the hospital, but the car was it was mangled.
Can I ask you, Theresa, because your mom heart must have just been bearing so much weight during that time. How did you find your own strength when it felt impossible, when you're going through that diagnosis? Because your background as a nurse, I'm sure you're trying to do the pathology, experiments. What is this? How can we get through this? Okay, we've made it, and now we have this accident. So how are you living in your strength in these months with Josh?
Well, I just kept praying. I kept praying. I am a Catholic, not practicing. I will say that. But I prayed to my saint, Saint Theresa. That's why I was named after in the Catholic Church. And I know some Christians say we shouldn't pray to saints, but that's just what we do. I pray to God too, but that's just what we do.
That's your practice and where you're at, and that's what this platform is about. Is we're open, and so whatever it is that Theresa did, and now your story with Josh takes a shift and a turn because he's had such a health condition for such a young man and for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But you have said before he started saying he doesn't feel like himself. When did that mental?
That was after the transplant. That was after the transplant. Prior to that, well, that's summer before he had to go back on dialysis. Okay, which was in October. It was after that accident that we took him to the hospital the next week, and they said no, we have to start on dialysis again. So so then they put the dialysis catheter in, and then he was going. But luckily he was able to be on dialysis at home at night. That's why he was able to go to school. So that was one thing that really helped both of us. Okay. But strength wise, I had a lot of support. My whole community, and I'm gonna say his name, and I hope if he sees this, he doesn't mind. But my best friend Hallie Flickinger from Youngstown, Ohio, which is where I grew up, and my other friend Diana. This was Hallie's twin brother, and he is a nephrologist in Toledo, Ohio, and he's a world-renowned nephrologist. I used to talk to him almost every day because that's, Josh's condition was basically, kidney failure.
Who else could you talk to about it, right?
I mean,
You had the
he
statistics
he was at
were.
that point had a doctor for over almost 40 years.
Yeah,
So he knew about this disease.
he knew.
He had patients with it, not that many, but
Right.
but he would just, he would just say, let's wait another day. Let's wait another day. Let's see what happens. Because truly no one knew. The
Right.
disease was so rare, and they did have a dedicated treatment. That this is interesting, and and it's not political, it is scientific. I'm sure you guys know who Dr. Fauci is. Well, back when he was doing AIDS research, he actually came up with the treatment for this disease. It was a 4 regimen treatment, and had it not been for that, he would not have lived. Josh wouldn't have lived. They told me that, you know, and I was like, boy, thank God he did that, even though it was 30 plus years ago. But yeah, he had come up with that treatment, and it worked. You know,
Wonderful.
it worked to keep his disease at bay. And so, even though he was on dialysis, the disease itself, because of that treatment, before he left the hospital that summer, he was in remission with the disease, which was lucky. It mimics, I'm not sure if any of your viewers have heard of lupus, but it mimics lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, wherein you can have what we call flares,
Yes.
flare ups. Yeah.
Yes.
Luckily, he didn't have any of that. I mean, once the drugs got on board, that part of his, the blood portion of his disease was, okay. Now,
Right.
the one thing that did happen, which really made a difference with him, because he had a dialysis catheter in his belly that it's called peritoneal dialysis, and you do it at night. And he really wanted to get back on the football field. But the one thing, and it wasn't the catheter that kept him, because he was doing well enough that his nephrologist said, I'll get you a brace, you can play football. The problem was all the medication that he took caused blood clots in his neck. He had about this long, and the same thing in his groin. So because of that, the hematologist said, no way.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you
too
can't play.
risky. It's
It's
too
too
risky.
risky. Yeah. So that just, when he couldn't play football and it was his senior year,
Mm.
he was completely devastated. And not only that, his face was very swollen from the steroids, so he didn't look like himself, right away. And
And you have a picture close with you,
yeah.
just other than your button. Can you share that with us and with our
Well, this is what he looked like the year before, when he was healthy and playing football. Yeah, yeah. And then this is his graduation picture. So yeah. Now this was after his transplant.
yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was before. He was on dialysis at home, but you could see as the dialysis started to work, the swelling went away in his face. So yeah, that was taken. He graduated in May of 2019 from high school with
Thank you for
honors.
sharing that.
Yeah, they even made him on the football team. They had like a Man of the Year award,
Mhm.
and I don't really think he felt like he deserved it, but everybody in the community did. He had the courage to still go out on that football field and stand with his friends, and it killed him not to play, you know, and it killed us watching him in the stands. But we he didn't say it out loud, but he wanted to be there for his team, and we did too.
Absolutely. Physically be there for them.
Yeah, and he had an
Absolutely.
amazing coach. He would bring the guys like twice a week, even in the summer, before football season started, to come visit him, and that helped a lot. And he had a lot of friends visit, and yeah, we have an amazing little community here. We're very resilient.
Yeah. So Theresa, let's dive into the hard parts of your story. You have so much that you walked through with Josh. but there was so much that wasn't shared about his story and that
Yes.
you've had
So
to go through on your own.
after his transplant, which was in August of 2019, so it was a couple months after he graduated from high school. I mean, I thought he was thrilled, and here's the best part. So we thought we were going to have to go through Cincinnati Children's, but he would have been. So Cincinnati Children's, they take their priority for transplants are the younger kids, obviously. Okay. So being 17, Josh probably wasn't going to get a kidney in that setting. But when he turned 18, we were able to go into the adult setting for UNOS, which is the nationwide organization where you can apply to either be a donor or recipient of an organ.
So he was able
Especially
to get
kidneys.
into that.
Yes. So when he turned 18, the year before, we knew they knew he was gonna be 18, and they said, well, once he turns 18, we can start to, look for a kidney. Well, the first thing they did was, and we hadn't even thought of it, they tested all of us, my husband, myself, and my son Andy. And lo and behold, and this is another miracle, all three of us were a match. That never happens.
Wow.
Ever. It doesn't happen. And so we were like, wow, we were blessed again, And so then so in August of 2019, my husband gave him a kidney. He was older, but he had Portia will know this because my husband is like a little nuts. Well, most men that get close to 60 are a little nuts. So, and he's an engineer, so he's very particular and he analyzes everything, sometimes too much. But he is a wonderful man. He's loving, and he was with Josh, a perfect match, and he was able to give his kidney to Josh. The funny part was he had a really big kidney, which is unusual. His one was larger than the other, so they gave that to Josh. And it was funny. You could see where they put the kidneys for people that their kidneys. I mean, the new kidney. They put it in the front of almost in there between their chest and their abdomen. They put it right there, like right where your stomach would be,
Okay.
on the right side. That's just what they do with them. They don't remove the kidneys. They're just all shriveled up and they don't do anything. So, but you could see that big, like swollen area
You
for a
see
long
his big
time.
kidney from Dad.
And
Yeah.
of course, my husband had to go, with, I gave him a big kidney, kind of thing. I hope he doesn't get mad at me that I say this, but too bad because that's how he was. And Portia is dying on the other end because she knows how my husband is. Anyhow, so that was our kind of our joke, but a good joke,
Sure. Right, because you
And
have to find the as we've said, these glimpses of humor throughout this process.
yeah, yeah. And we're a tight, very close family. We have a lot of inside jokes. We are big movie watchers, so a lot of the things we say are lines from movies.
There you go.
Just every family has their own thing, and that's kind of ours,
Yeah.
But yeah, he did really well. It took right away. There were really no complications, except for the blood clots, but they were already there from the treatment
From the treatment.
prior to the transplant. Yeah. And of course, he didn't have to do dialysis at night, which was the best thing. We even had a situation where one time we didn't have the bags for peritoneal dialysis are like, I'm trying to explain. They're like as big as my computer or bigger. They're huge. And for an adult male, and he was about 160 pounds or so, which he was tiny. He was a tiny little guy, but very muscular. You would go through 3 of those bags at night. And we had a cart that you would put them on. So the stuff would go into the abdomen and then drain back out. Well, one time the connection wasn't closed right and it drained out onto the floor. And his room was on the second floor. So he felt really bad. Like we had these big industrial things in here because they had to take the floor out because it was wet. But he always felt bad about that. And it was like it was an accident, and it was saving your life. So who cares what happened to the floor, But yeah, so there was one time right before his transplant when he was feeling good. We were sitting in our living room and he said to me, Mom, I have a funny feeling that I'm not going to be around very long. And I said, well, why do you feel that way? Do you feel depressed? No, I just felt that way. And I truly don't think at that point he was depressed. This was early on in the transplant, it was right afterwards. And he was feeling really great. It took a while. He wasn't feeling great right away, but he had to get used to, he had been on a lot of meds to begin with, but then there was even more, the transplant meds. And I mean, I don't know. I heard different people say that was one reason he took his life. He didn't want to take meds anymore, but he took his meds with him and he took them the morning he took his own life. So I kind of don't think that was it. I mean, I think it was part of it, because prior to being sick, he barely even took Tylenol. He just didn't need anything because he was that healthy. I think it had something to do with it, but I don't think that was the main reason. I think it was just a lot of things.
So how far, Theresa, was it from he made this statement to you, which is a profound statement for
Yes,
someone to say
especially when they're only 17 years old.
when they're 17
Yeah.
years old, from the time he makes the statement to you to the time that he actually dies by suicide? What is that time frame?
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
And did you see shifts in his mentality during those 4 years?
Yeah. Yes. But not until late. Not until late.
So
Not until
later,
about a year before he passed. Yeah. And the other important thing to tell you is he was able to go. He was majoring in mechanical engineering. Very intelligent guy. He even did that College Credit Plus, which out here in Ohio is you take college classes during your high school years, and he had like 16 credits already going into
wow,
college. And he went to the University of Akron. They gave him a special pass on. Normally, when you're a freshman, you go to a state university, you live on the campus. Okay, that's a requirement. But he didn't. He wasn't able to do that because he just had a transplant, and he would have been too susceptible. When you are on transplant meds, your
oh
immunity is
sure,
very
your
low. Your
immune
white blood
system
cells
is
can be
shot.
low. Yeah,
Yeah,
until you get built up. So
yeah.
this was the bad part. He has transplant in August of 2019. Had missed winter semester. Got to go back to school in person January of 2020. Well, guess what? You know what happened. Everybody knows what happened 3 months later, right?
COVID.
The whole United States shut down. And so they shut down Akron and he had to do online classes. He wasn't good at that. He wasn't motivated. He was a big gamer, but he did get through 2 years up in his room. But I think that was the biggest reason that he got depressed because
That
he was
isolation.
in isolation. Yeah. And he did communicate with his gamers, but because we really couldn't go anywhere. I mean, we did spend a lot of family time together. We played like every board game in our house, 20
Right. But
times.
you've shared with us, Theresa, what community and what brotherhood meant to him, even having to set sidelines his senior year of football. So this is just his makeup. This is who he is.
Hmm.
He needs and thrives on that
Yeah, and
connection.
he just didn't have it. And it just wasn't enough. Now they were having online classes at Akron, so his girlfriend at the time, and I don't want to say her name, but everybody that knows us knows who she is, and
Sure.
I don't want to bring up something bad, but she's a big part of the story. She kept him going. She had a positive attitude. They were in love, even though it was young love. They had been dating like 6 years, and he was able to go up there and visit her because she worked, but she was very good with her like PPE with the mask and gloves and all that. But she lived by herself at Akron, so he was able to go visit her, which was nice. Get him out of the house. Um, but I guess like the second year of COVID, when they still hadn't started the university up again, he had said a couple things to her, but they were arguing, and I think sometimes guys or the people in relationships that want to maybe prevent a breakup will say, "Oh, if you break up with me, I'm gonna, commit suicide."
There's a threat, right?
Yeah,
An
yeah.
ultimatum.
And so apparently had said that to her once or twice.
He said what to her?
He had said that he was going to take his own life if she broke up with him.
Okay.
But she
Yeah.
didn't think anything of it for the fact that it was because of that. She didn't think of it, as an ongoing mental health problem.
Sure. Sure.
And I didn't find this out until after they broke up, and he was with another girl. Well, that's what happens.
Right.
He was in his best friend's wedding, and so was this other girl, not his girlfriend at the time, and so he had broken up with who he at the end realized was the love of his life, and he didn't have her back yet. And I think that was unfortunately another big reason he did this. He realized that they were soulmates, and he made a mistake. And yeah, and a couple of days before he died, they spent a lot of time together. And what she had said was it had been over a year since they broke up, and she forgave him, and they were actually talking. She said to me they were talking adult stuff that they should have been talking a year 2 years before that.
Right.
But Josh had so much love to give. When he messed up and he hurt her, and then he found out that he hurt himself in the end, it was too hard for him.
Josh had a lot of weight to carry, and Theresa, as we move towards the end of the show today, his story is so impactful because he had so much given to him. Yeah. And you've said we've had, blessings after blessings, the three of us were a match. We had this amazing opportunity to receive the best healthcare. But sometimes those blessings are not enough to keep us going. And you shared a story with me, and it was the reason we wrote one of our affirmations today. Would you share that story with our viewers and listeners about how you caught a glimpse of Josh?
This is a really funny thing. I went into my bathroom. I was kind of sleepy, so I didn't want to turn the light on, so I wouldn't wake myself up. So I have a little nightlight in there. It's a Scentsy kind of thing. I close the door, and then I see this heart on the door. My toilet's on the left side of my bathroom. Then I look on the wall, and I see another heart. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really weird. And I had actually been thinking about Josh before I went into the bathroom. And there it was. There were two hearts staring me in the face. And I'm like, oh my God, that is from Josh. I took pictures of it. I sent it to everybody, And just a really freaky thing, where there'd be heart images in my bathroom at.
I don't think it's freaky at all. You let us.
Oh, no, I don't either.
It is him showing you, Mom, I'm here. Mom, I love you. And just like you shared leading in the episode with us, your son's wedding, and then seeing this shadow. Those things are real. We know that our loved ones are still
and
with.
I have talked to a few mediums. One was in my family, and he actually shared stuff with me that he would never have known because he hadn't seen Josh since he was a year old. And so there was no way he knew about any of this. 2 days after he died, I had fallen asleep in my recliner, and I felt a warm touch and a kiss. And he used to grab my face and kiss me. Another night, shortly thereafter, about a week after he died, I felt a huge hug. And then the morning after he died, he said, "Hey, Mom," clear as I'm talking to you right now. I heard him say it. And I have glimpses and signs every single day. And I mean, there was another thing that happened with that relative that was that's a medium. After my son Andy's wedding, they were here for the wedding, and he came to our house, and we had one of Josh's favorite hats there, and my husband didn't believe any of this. So this was a year after. Well, no, it would have been a year after Josh died, almost to the day, and so Richie was here in our where I'm at right now in my office, and my husband didn't believe any of it, and Richie started telling my husband Andy things about Josh that he wouldn't have known, and Andy was like, "Oh my God." And my husband actually got questions answered about things Josh was worried about, about school, about his girlfriend and about money. And Richie was, very specific, and my husband couldn't believe it. Let me tell you something else that happened, and I hope he doesn't mind that I share, but this was in the winter. We were out to dinner at a Mexican restaurant, and we were talking about Josh, and he said to me out of the clear blue sky, "Teresa, I'm not afraid to die anymore." And I said, "Well, I'm not either." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I know I'm going to see Josh on the other side. And if you know my husband, he's not very spiritual. But I was so happy that he had a breakthrough, because for about 6 months he wouldn't talk to Josh. He wouldn't talk about Josh at all, and it was very frustrating for me because I want to talk about him every second, every second of every day, and even today. We have a boat out of Lake Milton, which is here in Northeast Ohio. We go there almost every Sunday, and just driving out there yesterday, there was just, it's just constant. I know there's moms and dads out there that go through this, but I said to Andy, I said, I was thinking about Josh today. He said, "Yeah, Mom, I was too." So, yeah, it just never stops. And I do want to show this to you. Somebody wants to take a picture. This is very important.
Theresa, for those that are listening and couldn't see the picture that you held up, would you share with us what you have on screen so that those listeners can understand?
Okay, it's direct dial 988, Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 24/7, connecting you to crisis counselors. Okay. I have a friend who I met mutually last year through friends, who experienced suicide of her 12-year-old granddaughter. Her granddaughter's name is Kaylee, and I have her permission to talk about this. And a year ago, she started an organization called Kaylee's Legacy, and our mission is to bring suicide awareness and mental health awareness to young people, especially. And I am very focused on this. Unfortunately, she moved to Georgia for her own health and welfare, but we've kept it going, and we're going to keep it going. I've kind of hit a wall, though, out here where we live. The schools don't want us to say suicide, and I'm very upset about that, because we had a tragedy here in our community 3 weeks before Josh died. His high school, they were in a bus crash. This man, they were going to Columbus it was their band, Tusky Belly Trojan Band, out here in Bolivar, Ohio. And they were going to a band concert in Columbus. It was in November. And semi ran. He was going 8 miles an hour. He didn't stop. He ran into the bus, but in between the bus and the semi was an SUV with 3 adults, teacher, is actually Josh's favorite math teacher, a band mom, and another teacher, and a whole bus full of kids. 3 students died, and those 3 adults died. This was 3 weeks before Josh's suicide. So our community's been through a lot, and Josh is, taking his life just was like too much. And I worry about those young kids. They were freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors on that bus. And I worry that they are traumatized. They have PTSD. Who knows what's going on? But I'm worried that those kids are not going to get the help they need. Now,
But with Theresa, with advocates like you, because with your story with Josh, you have that knowledge to share. And with you and your girlfriend and Kaylee's mission, I know that you can do it. And I know that what you've shared with us today, that the heart-wrenching kidney transplant that Josh had to go through so young, watching this accident happen 3 weeks before his passing, him verbalizing not to one person, but to 2 people close to him. You have so much knowledge that can be shared. And there are going to be listeners and viewers today that had never heard of, or maybe they'd forgotten about the 988 national number, because it doesn't matter if they're in Ohio, it doesn't matter if they're in Oklahoma, Georgia, Texas. That is a national number.
Yes, it is.
There are going to be some of our viewers and listeners today who want to connect with you that say, hey, I know some additional resources, or I have a story to share. how can those individuals reach out to you and help coordinate or maybe even collaborate with you?
Well, it's Kaylee's Legacy, and it's on Facebook. Okay, and I can give you a link for afterwards. Or you can go to my email, teresa.mark14@gmail.com. And I'm doing two things. The one thing I really want to focus on is people that have had or need transplants and what they go through afterwards, because Josh did not have a dedicated psych program after his transplant. And I really feel like between the hospital and our doctor, he got lost in the system. I had no idea how depressed he was. His one girlfriend at the time did say some things to us, and so we went to the doctor, but this was like a year before he died. We went to the doctor, and he actually poured his heart out for a whole hour to our family doctor right here local in town. And the doctor gave him medicine, but he was supposed to get in-person treatment, and he didn't do it, and he didn't tell me that he wasn't doing it. And I feel like that's where the ball got missed, between the hospital where he had the transplant and our local doctor. Nothing against the doctor, but
Sure.
the doctor treated him with a double dose of Lexapro, and Lexapro is a very strong antidepressant, and it doesn't really work on a lot of people. A lot of times you need other, they sell a lot of biologics that really work with it. And
But
it
you're,
says,
again, you are in this position that you didn't ask to be in, but now you have the knowledge base to be an
mhm.
advocate.
Yeah, and so people really need to be careful with that, because it says right on the package the side effects are suicide ideations, especially for 18 to 24-year-olds. And Josh was 23. So he was right in that target
He was in
range.
that cusp.
Mm-hmm.
He was in that cusp. Well, Theresa, I'm going to extend an offer to you that as you work through your program and your advocacy, we would love to host you as a guest again for you to come on and talk about that and
Mm.
to connect. And if there's resources in our community that we can connect you with, our listeners and our viewers, because I think you're really onto something and people need those steps, because like you, when you're going through it with Josh and your husband's going through it, your other son, as a family, you may not be of the clear mind to ask these questions, these follow-up, and you're a nurse and
Yes,
you
I know,
have
and that's
so
that's the
much
thing that
knowledge.
has really hit me the hardest. I was his caregiver, and for me to miss all of that, it just. And I mean, I knew he was depressed, but I would ask him, how you doing? How you doing? I'm doing better, Mom. And he never missed his doctor's appointments at the Cleveland Clinic for his health, and that was the worst part. Health wise, he was doing the best he had been in years, but not mentally, he wasn't.
But not mentally. And
No,
I invite you to share this space with me with your program. I, even if you
thank
have
you.
an outline, let's talk about it. Let's get this information out there, because there are parents, their spouses, their siblings, there's other caregivers going through this today that say, I don't even know what question to ask
No,
first.
and you don't, and I feel like I was sharing this with Portia. I feel like I haven't heard anybody anywhere, and I'm on a lot of websites, on Blue Sky and on Facebook, with a lot of parents of suicide survivors,
Yes.
and no one has ever mentioned about transplants. And being a nurse, I worked with plenty of transplant patients that they don't know whether they're going to live from week to week. I mean,
Yes.
prior to a transplant, kidney people, people that are on dialysis, they are so sick physically that I cannot imagine what it is doing to their mental health,
Mental
you
health.
know,
Mhm.
uh, because no one even touches that I know of. And that was
Well,
the
you
difference.
are, and
Well,
you
and that was the difference between
are.
the children's hospital and the adult hospital. The children's hospital, they have, I think they're called child life specialists. They
Yeah.
come in every day and they talk to those kids, even if they're babies. They talk to them, and they also talk to the adults. You don't have that in an adult hospital.
You will,
No,
because
I
Teresa,
sure
you
hope
are
so.
going to be that trailblazer, and I know you are going to light this up, because more than anything, you have Josh right there with you. As we've said,
Yeah.
that's your guiding light.
He's here.
He's still shining that love and that heart for you. And so as long as you let that light in your heart lead you, you've got it. But I want to say thank you for coming on
so
today
much.
and
I'm
sharing.
surprised when I talk, I don't cry. So sometimes I do, but I could talk to you for 5 more hours about Josh, and I thank you so much. And my dear, sweet Portia.
Yes.
And
we want you to keep talking about Josh every day. Share him. But thank you, Theresa.
I do. Thanks again so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks again.
You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Shit. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.